Welcome everyone to today's Ask the Expert. We're going to talk about 3 new ways to enrich your productivity apps with Microsoft Graph Toolkit and data. Feel free to ask us any questions. My name is Beth. Today here with me is also Sebastian, and then we have a series of speakers on the call as well, waiting to answer your questions if needed. Before we get to the topics, let's look at Microsoft Digital Event Code of Conduct. I'm not going to go into details for this. I think I'm just going to leave a minute or two for people to read through this. Basically, just be nice and friendly to everybody, and then let's have fun. Okay, I'm going to move on. Question will appear on screen for everybody to see once it's approved, and upvote your favorite ones using a thumbs up to let us know what are the popular ones, so we need to answer accordingly. Experts will answer these verbally. Like I said, I will be on this call together with Sebastian and a couple of other experts on the call, and we'll also do our best to answer the most popular questions first. Our session is going to be recorded. Please don't record the session on your own. Help your moderators and do not spam the chat. And here are our today's topics. We are going to talk about file web components in your application as part of the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and then react to rich notifications and handle notifications transactionally. I am going to stop presenting so that we can start with some of the questions. Oh, hi, Sebastian.
Hey, Beth, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm amazing. Listen, Beth, we have a first question that came in. I think you're going to be the one to be able to start this thread of questions, and we invite everybody to use the Q&A functionality of Teams Live Event, right, to ask anything that is either related to the topics of today, which is certifications, Event Hub, webhooks, Microsoft Graph Toolkit, but also feel free to anything that crossed your mind regarding Graph. We have a lot of experts in the room that will be able to help, but I want to start with one of your kind of very, very close to you, Beth, and I'd like to hear what is, like, from your own words, what's the value of building an application using MGT, using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit?
I think the value for developers, first and foremost for us, is to be able to accelerate your development cycle. That being said, Microsoft Graph Toolkit is a collection of reusable web components and authentication providers, which are fully functional and works for all. Because it's based on web standards, it works for any web framework and for all the browsers. So, you know, the most important reason for me is you can just drop a couple lines of code in your application, whatever application it is, and then get going. And then I think some of the reasons, besides that it's super easy for developers, are, you know, it's fully functional. For one, it's graph powered behind the scenes. Some of our components are bound to graph endpoints, and you also have the flexibility to use templates or custom CSS properties, JavaScript properties, HTML attributes to be able to tweak your components and present it in the way that you want it, but it comes out of the box already beautiful, looking like any M365 product. So that way, if you want to use it out of the box, you have the choice. That would be my reasons for using Microsoft Graph Toolkit.
Awesome. I think that definitely answers the question here. It's always great also to hear from a dev to a dev, right? What's the value for you? And I know you've like a hardcore dev, and to hear that from you is definitely great.
Plus, our representative is a giraffe who doesn't like them, so.
Awesome. Well, I would encourage everybody to ask some of the questions in the chat, anything that crosses your mind. Right there, we're ready to take on your questions, so feel free to send them in, definitely. We want to see it.
Seb, if I may actually jump in and ask a question. This is a question that came up during the session yesterday, right? But one of the demo we did was around rich notifications, right? So what are the actual endpoints that support, or what are the entities currently that we have in the graph that support rich notification? Like, can you name some of them?
I absolutely can name some of them, and feel free, anyone in our internal chat, if there's any other things that cross your mind, please let me know. But definitely, the rich notifications kind of surface started initially with Microsoft Teams. So you can have full rich notification with Teams messages, both on the channel side of things and on the private chats, so one-on-one or group chats. Now at Build this year, we announced the availability of the Exchange entities, right? So you have messages, emails, events. All of these are also possible. So what does it offer you? It offers the developer not having to go back to Graph when something happens in Graph. When something happens, you're going to get a notification inside your app, in your webhook or in your event hub, and you're going to be able to act on it right away instead of going back to Graph with the IDs that we're sending you. So all of these different rich notifications that exist in Graph really improve the scalability of these applications, because you don't have to request a new context to Graph. You don't have to re-authenticate. You have all the data that is available. Keep in mind, though, that you're going to have to work a little bit around the notification because you will need to decrypt the notification because we want to make sure that the content is encrypted and secured. So you're going to have to decrypt it. But besides that, you're going to have access to the actual email that comes in, Teams messages, or event right there. So it's definitely something that is possible there. And I hope, Nick, that answers the question. Thanks for asking.
It sure does. Thanks.
I see, Beth, we have a couple of questions that came into the Q&A. I will be asking the first one. So does MGT work properly with Blazor? What are differences we have to think versus pure JavaScript, for instance?
That's a good question, Sebastian. So absolutely, it does work with Blazor. Actually, we have a sample ready in our repo. If you head over to aka.m/mgt, you will be able to see a PR that is live right now. It hasn't been merged yet. It is the Blazor. I think there are two versions, right? There's the WebAssembly and then Blazor server. Actually, this is contributed by one of our members, Thomas. I keep forgetting his name, from our community. So we encourage everybody, to go check out if you wanted to look at that sample for Blazor. I think the second part of the question was, how do we think about it if it's different from JavaScript? The Blazor server sample that we've been seeing, there's not much difference because you're essentially handling all of the MGT related functions from your front end, which are written in JavaScript for Blazor applications anyways. But like I said, because it's built on web standards, you will be able to use it in any framework to be able to present it in the way, whether it's React or Angular, or you can wrap it for your own benefit and then do, functionally whatever you want to do with it.
Awesome. That's great question. We have another one, and actually this one actually just answered 2 questions, rather, so that's great. Let me ask you another one. We have providers, right? We have authentication providers as part of MGT. Is there any limits to these providers, or to the custom, if you had to build one yourself, for instance, is there any limits that needs to be taken care of?
I think we've seen some questions yesterday. If the providers are designed to work in a certain way, right? There's a couple of providers that we have today. The most popular one is the MSAL provider, and then with build and the release of 2.2, we also introduced the MSAL 2 provider, which supports the under the hood MSAL browser SDK or package. And then on top of that, we also have providers that works with Teams and SharePoint specifically, which is MGT Teams provider, and then SharePoint provider that you can build SharePoint web parts with. We also have recently introduced a Electron provider, which will help you build native apps that run on all the platforms that you can, access native APIs, such as change your desktop picture for Windows or what have you. But regarding limitations, because our authentication providers are built in a way so that developers can access and use it super fast, if they're using, certain what's it called, authentication flows behind the scenes. But we're also following what MSAL has already, right? So in that case, the MSAL 1 provider utilizes the implicit flow, and then the MSAL 2 provider actually uses the what's it called, PKCE flow, like the
device code?
It's the more no, not device code. What's it called? Now I'm like blanking. It's too early. I can't think of any words before I'm getting my coffee. One of the popular ones. I'll look it up here shortly. So, as you're utilizing these different authentication flows, there are different things you can do, but that's by design. And then on top of all of these, if you would like to utilize your own authentication flows behind the scenes, for example, you already implemented it in your own backend using whatever ASP.NET or any framework, what have you, MVC, you can always use either simple provider or proxy provider to be able to handle the token exchange between your backend and the front end, where you're introducing Microsoft Graph Toolkit components. So that way you can use your own token and your own authentication version, or like if the authentication is not handled or cannot be handled by our provider, such as we keep hearing partners saying like, oh, what if I have SAML to authenticate? And I was like, I don't really know anything about that, but I know if you got the token, we will get you the data. So I think that's my answer to the question.
Yeah, and while this happened behind the scene, we got the name, which is the ProofKey for Code Exchange, PKCE, which is the kind of the type of exactly. So
or authorization code flow. Yeah, it's essentially, I think based on documentation, is a little bit more secure than the implicit flow.
Exactly. Thanks for that. That's absolutely great. I see we have a couple of other questions in the chat. Do you want to go through some of them, Beth?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to look through it here too. Seeing like lots of Blazor questions. There is one that says, can I use Graph with Signal R in order to monitor changes to X data item within Graph? For example, can I have Signal R notifications sent out when X user have a group change or if a file is uploaded? I don't know specifically how that worked together, but I do know that some of the Microsoft Graph Toolkit components offer events such as a reload function for developers to call if you want to reload your page based on, whatever action, what have you, or time, or, so for the X users for group change and file uploads, I have to double check for the documentation for getting MGT people and users, but for files specifically, we are, introducing the reload method as part of the component. So if you want to actually, I think one of our contributors, this is why community is so important. One of our contributors was the one who mentioned this before file component, file list component become live. So he was the one who helped us implement this as part of the component. So I encourage everybody, if you have new features, requests, or if you found bugs with us, feel free to go to our repo and mention it for us, and help us fix it if you could, or at least to let us know. So
absolutely, aka.ms/mgt. You're gonna be able to help us. I think I can also answer that question from another side. When you think about the event notification or the change notification, you could hook up your UI to a Signaler hub somewhere in Azure and have the change notifications call into the Signaler hub. So if you want to have like a real-time app that goes from data changing in Microsoft 365, automatically pushing that data to Signaler, and then afterwards pushing it back to your app to really have a live experience, to have like a really, really modern feel to your application, this is absolutely possible. And that's the beauty of the change notifications as they happen server to server. So our graph calls in your webhook or your event hub, and then you can process it and add it to any queue in your Signaler. So that's definitely something that can be done from the server side and can definitely be hooked up onto MGT if you want to even automatically reload some of the MGT components with Signaler, and you build that logic yourself. That's definitely doable.
Thank you, Seb. There's another one. It's a similar question that I actually saw yesterday. This is interesting. About time details on refresh token, and I think someone from our team it's already posted a link, so feel free to check out that link about different lifetime token configurations for different kinds of tokens.
Yeah, and it's important to have a good understanding of these, because this is really where your application lives, right? When you have refresh tokens, you want to make sure that you don't get that sign-in experience too much about like every single hour. You don't want to re-log into the app as when's the last time you actually logged into Office 365, right? It just like feels so natural when you're using these refresh tokens. Something that is also coming up from an identity standpoint, we are bringing something called the Continuous Access Evaluation, or CAE for short. I'm going to add the link in the announcements. It is something that will give you access token that will have a dynamic lifetime. So depending on signals and risk and security elements, you might be able to use an access token for a little bit longer than the hour that you're actually getting right now. So it's something that we are starting to roll out and is now enabled on Microsoft Graph. So that's definitely something you want to look at from a security standpoint. Going to make sure that either me or the team is pushing some details on that in the chat. Oh, I have a question for you, Bet. It's a good one. I'm afraid of the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is it possible to use MGT with older versions of SharePoint? We know it's possible to use it with SPFX today in SharePoint Online. But in that case, the question is for SharePoint 2016. Is it possible to use it in on-premises SharePoint?
I think that's a good question for Brian. I haven't tried it myself, but I have faith in it. I'm not sure. I'd have to test it, or if anybody on the call has tested.
I think I have parts of it. Definitely, if you are running in a full on-prem environment, the data source for MGT is the Microsoft Graph, right? And the Microsoft Graph is not an on-prem. It's not an on-prem thing. So potentially, if you're living in a hybrid, it might be possible to do it if you have the right combination and everything, but definitely MGT is made for the cloud. It's a cloud-first product, and it's going to be way better using SPFX, especially because SPFX does not support the latest version in 2016. So definitely here, I would highly recommend to, you could try it, but I would not expect it to be a great experience for sure.
Brings good, like, great memories from a couple of years ago. I actually used to work with Brian in a whole different setup in a whole different company working on SharePoint. So I wish we had MGT back then.
The good old days.
I know, right? Sorry, I'm trying to like also look at questions in the chat too.
Let's try to see. I have one here, which is really interesting, and I think that brings on really the power of the community, right? Question is, does Graph and all of Graph, right? Graph is large, there's MGT, but there's a ton of other repos on GitHub. Is there any good first issues that people can start working with and get involved for the first time? Like if you wanted to give a little bit of your time because you love the community and you want to help on Microsoft Graph on any of these, is there anything people can do to really make their first contributions to Microsoft Graph and potentially MGT also?
Yes, I think we have for MGT specifically in our repo. Again, if you head over to aka.ms/MGT, that's where our open source software lives. You would be able to see, I think on the main page in the README, we have badges on how many questions that were tagged with, best first question or best first issue, or, good first issue, or help wanted. So these are things that we think would give you a good overview of the repo when you're looking at these issues. And we really wanted the community to be able to be involved and help us solve some of these problems. Maybe there's other issues that's, bug hotfixes or something that's prioritized a little bit higher, but we really want these new little features to be introduced as well. So these are all, good issues for people to start with. I'm sure other issue or other repos as part of the Microsoft Graph overall organization has similar tagging mechanism as well. We also have lots of good community, such as the PnP community. They do Ask Me Anything sessions. They do, what are the other thing called?
Sharing is caring.
Is caring, right? So, right. So there are all these sessions designed or information, designed for beginners who wanted to help us with the work.
Absolutely, and I think also I'm thinking here, what could be a good first issue, especially when you're working on Graph. The area where you're going to land a lot with Microsoft Graph is on the documentation. You're going to read the documentation days in, days out. So I really believe that helping with documentation, when you see a typo, when you feel something is maybe could be a little bit clearer in the way it's written, feel free to just go and edit that page directly from the documentation. All that documentation lives in GitHub, so you can do a pull request to our documentation and help Graph Toolkit, our samples, our documentation to get better by helping us building the next version of our Graph documentation. So that's definitely something. And another area where I'd like everybody to go and help each other is our Microsoft Q&A. Microsoft Q&A is our platform where we can ask questions to other folks when we have issues, challenges, bugs, or whatsoever. You can go on aka.ms/askgraph, and over there we are monitoring that from Microsoft, but also the community is watching. So if you want to contribute and help others, that's also a great area to start.
I think this brings up another good point. I was trying to say, like, our team's expertise lies on, certain areas, right? And there's only so many people on the team. So if anybody wants to see more samples built for Microsoft Graph Toolkit, it might just be easier if you can help us look at, the combination of the technology. Maybe we don't have expertise in, and help us. Let's make it collaborate.
Absolutely. So it seems like someone is challenging both of us, Beth, and I'm going to ask it to you first, and I'm going to ask some of the folks in the room. So anybody that wants to answer that question also, where do you see the future of Graph? What would you like to see improve to help you build Microsoft Graph Toolkit, for instance? What would be kind of your wish that Graph brings in?
Man, this is hard. I wish it's combined with some sort of intelligence behind it, so that, I mean, it already does. I mean, it's all about data, right? Like, what can we do with data after we get it? Graph and AI or intelligence would be great. We were joking about this yesterday, actually, in a different session. We're like, next time, so right now we wanted developers to click a button and then log in. Maybe next time that would just like say to your computer, I want to log in as blah, and it does it for you. But in all seriousness, overall, I think there's lots of potential between, all those Azure services that we have that offers on the models that we utilize. There's a lot of potential to introduce more intelligence to the service.
I love that answer. Let me pull some folks. Well, I'm gonna go last. I want to pull in some people that I know have some opinion there. Brian, would you mind unmuting and just share there, or Nick, maybe? Do you want to come in and just share? What do you think? What would you like to see improve? Like, you're working with a ton of partners and customers today. What do you like to see like improve from a Graph standpoint, or even from other areas of Graph?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think is really about the working on some step-by-step tutorial, right? So I come from a different area of the Graph. I focus on something called Graph Data Connect, but I think it's really important for whatever we put out there to actually put emphasis on getting people started with the tool, right? Being able to get those step-by-step tutorials. So this is definitely an area I'm personally focusing on, trying to improve those tutorials that we have.
Yeah, I love it. Like a good first run experience for developers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And funnily enough, that's exactly the same point I was going to say. Make it easy for developers to make their first step. And I honestly believe that MGT is a great way to start working with Graph, because it's literally like 5 lines of HTML and you're good to go. You can start learning and hooking up to some of the endpoints of Graph. So that's definitely something that is amazing, I believe. Let's see if we have some more questions. I do see one around Event Hub, which is one of the topic of the session you did, Beth, with Aicha. The question is, can you enlighten us about what this Event Hub driven approach to webhook is? I might want to answer this question. So I'm going to go for it. And if anyone wants to jump in, feel free to jump in also at the same time. Event Hub is really an amazing system or technology to receive events, right? It's really made for like planet scale applications to receive as many events as possible, which potentially Microsoft Graph will emit. Think about how many Teams messages exist in your tenant. How many emails people are receiving. So here, Event Hub is just a very scalable approach to receiving the event. So instead of having a webhook or a web service running and receiving the events, here in that case, it's really about getting the event in Event Hub, and potentially, like I just showed in the session that will follow very quickly, you're going to see she's using logic apps as a way to do the logic of our application, how to loop through these notifications, how to store these notifications in another system, or to call in an Azure function or something like that. That's definitely the value of Event Hub, where you can really simplify the development experience, or even the low-code experience becomes extremely simplified. It makes, I would believe, everything so easy to use when you're building an application. It simplifies basically all the different steps of doing it. So it's still a great thing to have a webhook or a web service if that's what you want. But if you're more on the data side of things, I think Event Hub makes a ton of sense. Let me go and look at the list of questions we have. I think we covered pretty much all of them. Someone keeps me honest here. Is there anything that we did not cover? I think we're actually out of questions, and you know what? We're also out of time. We're now on the hour. So I'd like to. I think we had a small connection issue with Beth that left us at the end. I think she was getting ready for our session that starts in a couple of minutes, so she had to run to the studio in Seattle to do that. No, I'm joking. But I wanted to thank Beth for being here. I wanted to thank all the colleagues here, Nick, Brian, June Schweda, Deanna, Elise, Dan Stan, Deva also was here. So basically all the team, all the production team, Beth reappeared, everybody. Beth, thank you so much for hosting this session with me. It was great. Hope everybody feels like Graph is a great technology. Remember, graph.microsoft.com. Graph Explorer, aka.ms/GE to start with your first experience with Graph, and aka.ms/MGT to see the latest about Microsoft Graph. Beth, final words?
Sorry, everyone. I've booked this for a while. It's like a really spotty internet connection. But thanks for having me here, and make sure that you check out the Graph sessions if you want to filter for what's it called, modern work in the list. You can find all the Graph sessions there, and then also check out the M365 developer program if you want to get started, so that you can get your sample tenant and data pack that comes with it to be able to play around with our tools.
Awesome. Well, everybody, it looks like people are cheering for a drum solo or something like that. So I might end that session. You won't hear anything, but I might go back to the drum and we can close out on this. So Beth, you can go if you want to sing or play some guitar or something like that. You might be able to do it. Everybody, enjoy the rest of build. Cheers.